And a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 3 of the Swarbrick.com Formula Alpha Championship for the second half of 2023. It is good to be back, and we're here on the streets of Singapore. What a race this should turn out to be. I mean, if it can turn this year's Formula 1 season around, surely it will do wonders here in our already nail-biting season in the Formula Alpha Championship. Just under 50 minutes to go in qualifying. We're on board with Will Inglis at the moment. He currently leads this session with a 142.43 on his lap. Seeing him now head around for another go. Either this will be an in-lap or he might be pushing for another fast lap. But as you can see there, we joined a little bit too late to catch his mini sector. That was a fairly quick lap alone there. It was a 141.8, the first driver then this session into the 141s. I was actually wondering, I was watching just before we went live, I was looking at the likes of Andy Craig, Will Inglis, Paul Brady, all kind of hovering in the mid to high 42s, and thought, oh, we could have a bit of a battle forming up here. But then Will Inglis comes along and just smashes it out of the park, really. The Marina Bay Park that we are here for this evening. Should note, in case you missed it in the F1 race just a few days ago, a slightly different track layout for this evening's racing, pertaining to what I believe is some construction work actually going on at the Marina Bay, as Will Inglis brings an end to his stint here. Yeah, I believe it's some construction work going on, so he's decided, the track has been slightly altered in Sector 3. It was a little bit twistier than what we currently run with, although overall still a very tight and twisty circuit is this Singapore GP track. Actually a little bit of an odd one, I find, at least. Obviously, I'm certainly no Formula 1 driver myself, but I have a little bit of experience in this in some more sim racing, maybe a bit more arcadey stuff as well with the Formula 1 franchise. And while yes, there are some tight and twisty parts of the track, there's also parts which really do exercise your engines, really get you up into the high RPMs, the likes of the run down towards turn 7, the run down towards turn 10, and then of course the corners through from what is now turn 18 all the way down to the starter lap at the apex of turn 1. That's a fairly big run, because a modern single-seater car will take turn 18 to turn 19, as it is now known on this current track layout. Oh dear, I was about to say we'd take it as if it was a straight, but there is Alex Smith taking the entire circuit as a straight. I believe he's had a couple of internet issues recently, is why he hasn't been in the previous couple of rounds, and it's unfortunate if he isn't able to get underway this evening. He was hoping to. I believe he was playing around with his Wi-Fi, so hopefully we see him for the end of the session yet. But yes, so apart from Alex Smith doing that, you can treat that big run down towards turn 1 as a very long straight indeed. So although it is a tight street circuit, still some decent speeds to be found elsewhere on track. I suppose really, as drivers will at the moment be looking into their setups and picking how they want to get their wings adjusted for the races later on. It will be a little bit more challenging than what we're perhaps used to, because with these revisions to Sector 3, it's a little bit less kind of cut and dry as to how you would set up the circuit, because previously we had an extra couple of corners. They really were tight and twisty. They really were, especially if you had a full load of fuel on board, they were a little bit cumbersome in some of the more modern single-seaters, especially likes of an F1 car in some games. But now it's a little bit more free-flowing. I actually quite like the revisions here. I think I was a little bit sceptical at first, but I think it worked quite well. So it'll be interesting to see what the drivers think of that and how they adjust the way that they were thinking about going into this race weekend, because this is a bit of uncharted territory for this racetrack. Although, as we luckily see Alex Smith being able to rejoin, certainly not uncharted territory for Will Inglis at the top end of the field. 141.875 sees him still on provisional pole. Andy Craig has got a little bit closer. I'm actually going to go on board with him as he's looking to go faster once again. With that 142.1, I believe he's just ever so slightly brushed the wall. Does he have any front wing damage? Not entirely sure. He's keeping his foot in it regardless, which is what we like to see. He's gone purple through the first sector, a 31.3. Looking to make another half a second there, but I think he locked up and had a big off into that barrier there. What a shame. Copying George Russell in some of the wrong ways perhaps, but that is Andy Craig back into the pit lane for a little while longer. It was actually the rear wing that took the brunt of the hit there, so although we didn't see it, I imagine he span around and ended up facing the wrong direction on track, which is not ideal at this stage in qualifying. Still has 10 minutes to go. He'll be able to get a good few laps in there, at least maybe 3 or 4 fast lap attempts to go for him in this session. And he was the nearest car to rival Willingliss, although just like what we saw in qualifying on Sunday, we are seeing a fairly decent amount of track ramp up. The drivers have already you may notice a slight shift in schedule for the running in both championships this season, as we actually have Jack Hodson and Matt Daly having a fairly big impact there, so I'm not sure what's happened. Matt Daly is able to carry on. Jack Hodson has to dive back into the pits. But yes, so slightly revised timetabling allows an extra half an hour session worth of practice for the drivers before they jump into qualifying. So that will help the drivers get a little bit more familiar. They will, of course, do that even more so throughout qualifying. But in addition to that, I think we'll be experiencing a little bit of track ramp-up, although we do start off in fairly optimal conditions. Here, a set of course that does take into effect things like tyre kind of rubbering in and marbles as well. So we may be seeing some of that come into play. I actually can't remember now. It's been... Would you believe it's been 10 years now since Assetto Corsa was released? I remember it. I remember it coming out when I was 11 years old when this game came out, and I'm not sure if I know it was an effect in Project Cars and Assetto Corsa Competizione. I'm not sure. Maybe if someone who was clearly more switched on than me correct me here. If that kind of tyre physics was an original part of the base game, whether that is part of our CSP or fairly big suite of mods that we run, whether that was an addition. Because Custom Shaders Patch, while it does add, the ability to add shaders and a few graphical tweaks, it adds quite a bit more to the game as well in terms of weather, in terms of physics as well. It's a fairly big overhaul, and it's one of my go-to mods now. The second I see someone with an Assetto Corsa install, I always recommend that they get CSP going for some fairly obvious reasons. I think it's looking fairly good for quite an old game. As we just watch here, Barry Clayton currently on for a fairly fast lap himself. He has gone second fastest with a 42 flat. It is currently predicted a 141.6. We're joining him now at the end of the middle sector. Currently up by about half a second on his previous time, but 31.6 through that first sector. So not quite as close as he'd like to be to Andy Craker, I am sure now. But we are currently heading now down towards turn 14. So we're at the start of sector 3 now. 42.3. Through that middle sector as well, another good improvement. He's losing a little bit of time on his predicted here through turn 14. I think he cost himself a little bit of time on the exit, which would be a great shame because it was starting to be a fairly quick lap indeed. He's made a little bit, though, under braking as we head through the newly named 16 and 17 now. Back into the 42s. It's going to be very close indeed, very fine margins, pushing with all of his might through turn 18 and turn 19. He crosses the line. Does improve, in fact, to a 41.957. The next driver into the 41s then. Not quite as fast as he would have liked to have been. He was predicted potentially to be quicker than Willingliss, but still a good time nonetheless. Actually, he's on a bit of a qualifying roll here. He's opted to put a couple of laps of fuel on board the car to run later into the session, so we might still see another fast time here if the tyres have it left. To go that quickly. On board as well now with Willingliss. He's come to the end of another fast lap attempt, and as it stands, he's looking to improve on his already impressive provisional pole here at 141.8. It's potentially outdone by 141.7 as things stand now, heading through turn 18, turn 19, bouncing over the curbs. You don't want to take too much of those curbs because it will spit you straight off, and unfortunately for Willingliss, he did take too much of those curbs and settles for a 140. Oh no, it was a 141.7 there. Apologies. He does improve, but unfortunately evades track limits there, so that time is null and void. No improvement for Willingliss in that previous lap. One thing to watch out for. We haven't seen too much in the way of track limits violations in qualifying for quite some time now. So maybe just the nature of this circuit lending itself to that type of thing. So drivers are going to have to be careful for that one. And we continue on in this qualifying session. Andy Craker, a 142.000, very consistent time there. We're going to go back on board though with Barry Clayton, so he comes toward the end of his next attempt. He's just heading through turn 17 now. Just that long, fast left-hander to negotiate. Towards the end of the lap here is predicted for an improvement, does improve, gets oh so close to Willingliss. It's a 41.887, only 1/100th of a second between the two front runners in this session here. That must sting a little bit. Has 5 minutes to go. What does Barry Clayton do here now? Does he opt to try and get another lap out of these tyres? He might be able to do so. Of course, I am not one to dictate, really. I'm not in the car. I don't know how those tyres are feeling. Or does he opt to dive back into the pits, take a little bit of fuel out of the car, and go for one last high-stakes attempt? It doesn't really matter, though, because in all of this, unfortunately, I did miss it. I should have been on board with it. Matt Daly has just come in with an electric Sector 2. In fact, it was so fast, he lost time in Sector 3, but it didn't really matter. A 1:41.4 for Matt Daly. That's nearly half a second quicker than the rest of the field. 4 minutes to go in this qualifying session, and all of a sudden Matt Daly positions himself as the new favourite for pole position here at Singapore. A 41.3 predicted, make that a 41.5. Either way, still looking strong for Matt Daly, and he has shown all of his cards on the table now. What will Will Inglis do to respond? I tell you what he'll do. He'll dive into the pits by the looks of things and get ready for what will be the final charge here in qualifying. We have a few more close cars on track as well. In fact, the top four, if you eliminate Matt Daly, in fact, the second down to fifth is covered by only 0.4 of a second, and that gap doubles if you include Matt Daly to about 0.8 of a second. Still impressive, even with that margin taken into account. Let's have a look at Alex Smith here. Alex Smith, glad to see he's been able to get back into the session. Certainly doesn't have as many laps as he would like under his belt. He's about down by about 5 or 6 laps compared to the rest of the pack, owing to his connection issues. So there's your first racing driver excuse, Alex. Have that one for free. But we'll just want to go back on board with Matt Daly, because that was why, ladies and gentlemen. It's a 1:40.8. He's now found a second on Will Inglis, and that was all made in the middle sector once again. A 41.8, and then it was a 31.4 and 27.5 in the other sectors. They were both personal bests, but that middle sector really seems to be where Matt Daly is showing his strengths here. So looking like could be a little bit more downforce on his car compared to the rest of the pack, especially if he's losing out towards Sector 3. Sector 3 now, arguably, I suppose, combined with Sector 1, although Sector 1 has that interesting Turn 1 through to Turn 4 complex for the first overtaking zone. It looks to be that the higher speed areas seems to be where Matt Daly losing out ever so slightly, but more than making up for it through the middle sector. Dives back into the pit here. Had actually set a purple sector, but clearly messing up somewhat heading into that middle. Dives back into the pits, as does Will Inglis here. Not sure what went on with his qualifying charge. Alex Smith has just gone purple in the first sector, a 31.153. Monitoring his ping as well, just in case. Looking good for the time being, so he could be on for a decent lap here. Let's continue on with that purple sector he's looking for. We don't have a predicted time in for Alex Smith actually yet. We don't have enough data based on him in this session to make that prediction. So certainly on the back foot so far in this qualifying session. Let's see what he can do now in the rest of this lap. A little bit of understeer creeping in there, using all of that front steering lock, I suppose the rear steering lock, as he can really, to get the car around turn 13. Bit of a tricky corner, turn 13. It lures you into a false sense of security, but it is tighter than you would expect, or perhaps the track diagram would reveal. But an improvement through Sector 2 for Alex Smith as well. And we run down out towards turn 16, just kissing the apex, actually riding a little bit more curb through turn 17 there, and now just that long sweeping left-hander which catches so many drivers out. Back onto the throttle then, and he crosses the line to take second place in this qualifying session. So Will Inglis, currently, well, previously original pole sitter, then sat in P2, now demoted to P3. Fantastic lap from Alex Smith there, sees him now take second place, and with a potential spot on the front row of the grid. Less than a minute to go now in this qualifying session. So drivers are already on their current fast laps. This will be their last fast lap, and that is a great shame for Andy Craker. He's just had a little bit of front wing damage from a collision with the wall. He should be able to, though, recover this lap potentially and get another fast lap in if he is lucky enough. Let's see as we continue on through this session. Steve Knight about to cross the line. He should get another fast lap in, as should Will Inglis. As should Andy Craker as well. Potentially Guy Swarbrick and Matt Daly, although Matt Daly has had a fairly big impact with the wall and seems to be carrying damage as a result here. Not that he needs to do much more in this session. At blistering time from him so far. So then we will stay on board with Will Inglis. He'll be the first of the drivers in this current pack of drivers on a fast lap to complete what will be the final few laps in this session. Now on towards turn 6. Not much of a turn really in these cars at all. You can stay planted with your right foot on the throttle here. Now heading through turn 7, left-hander followed by a few more 90-degree corners to negotiate. Will Inglis stands losing time through this first sector then, as we see it's actually Jack Hodson. Is that Jack Hodson? No, Andy Craig has dove back into the pit, or dived? Well, probably past 10th there, but that is all she wrote for Andy Craig in this session, and for Jack Hodson, and for Alex Smith. It's just Will Inglis and Matt Daly out on track now, I can tell you. Will Inglis looking like he's losing a little bit of time through the first sector. The predicted times, as you can see, not really representing what is going on track at this point in time, so we'll have to go old school as we head through turn 14. The right-hander now, and he starts the final sector of this lap. Heading through then, it was turn 16 and he took a bit too much curve. The back end did step out. That could cost him big time now as we run through turn 18, and it does in fact. He dives into the pits. That is the end of qualifying for Will Inglis. P3, all he could hope for. Now all we wait to see is if Matt Daly is going to improve. So Matt Daly is our man on pole for the first race here in Singapore for round 3. It's a purple middle sector, losing out through the first sector, but could that be enough to make yet another stride towards the mid to low 1 minute 40 region on this lap? We just have a couple more corners to negotiate to find out here. And in fact, no, it's going to be a return to the pits for Matt Daly. So that brings an end to this qualifying session. It is Matt Daly, Alex Smith front row, Will Inglis, Barry Clayton closely behind it, and Andy Craig after a strong charge in qualifying settles for P5. And that rounds out the top 5 after qualifying. We'll join you in just a few minutes for the first race here at round 3 in Singapore. Welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. We are here on the grid, just over 30 seconds to go until lights out, and here we are. It's Matt Daly and Alex Smith, again, lined up on the grid as the rest begin to arrive, and the drivers get ready to head into Turn 1. Turn 1, a place in Singapore which has seen many a race settled right on the first lap here. And as you can see, yes, my steering wheel is not centered. I made the mistake of actually plugging it in today. There we are. Oh, no, there we are. All sorted. Only the highest quality of peripherals here. And we have not long to go until the lights out there. Just look at that. I'm just checking there. Look at the amount of camber on Matt Daly's car there. That is fairly extreme, I'd say, compared to the rest of the field. Either way, it's 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away. Slow start there for Matt Daly. Actually, it looked to be that Barry Clayton, or perhaps Andy Craker, actually got a fantastic getaway. He makes his way up into P4, makes contact with Alex Smith, drops back to P6 instead here. And it is still Matt Daly who leads this race. And Andy Brammer, actually, I know Paul Brady, apologies there, making good progression into the 4th position. Here, he's had a good start, as has Jack Hodson, back up into 7th. Had a qualifying that was a little bit less than ideal, perhaps, and found his way up into P7, so good start for him. Meanwhile, speaking of good starts, Matt Daly now 1 second clear of the field already. That's an important margin that he needs to build, as Willingless and Andy Smith and Alex Smith rather are wheel to wheel there, as Willingless puts a nose in, gets up into 3rd position. Had a brief look at 2nd, but has to remain in 3rd for now. Barry Clayton, meanwhile, is in 4th, defending from both Andy Craker and Paul Brady. This could be a fairly interesting battle forming up here between these three. Three very closely competitive drivers, actually, as we see Paul Brady and Andy Craker side by side in a track that's not famed for its overtaking ease or its width. And there is the result of that. That is Paul Brady in the wall. What a disaster for the start of the race for him. Meanwhile, Andy Craker still in 5th, but by the looks of things has a fair amount of front wing damage, as does Guy Swarbrick there. In fact, is missing his front wing according to the damage system. That is not an ideal start to the race. Paul Brady, I think, was involved in that accident between him and Guy Swarbrick, which is a shame. And I believe we've seen the return of the Gulf livery, unless my eyes are mistaken. No, there it is on Jack Hodson's car there, who appears to have Andrew Harvey's car for some reason. Not sure what has gone on with that, but it's a welcome return for the Gulf livery, just like we saw with Williams this weekend at Singapore, actually. So Andy Craker has had to dive into the pit with substantial damage. What a shame, his race coming to a premature end. Then meanwhile, Matt Daly, cool, calm and collected at the front end of the field. He is 2 seconds clear of the rest of the pack. Alex Smith, meanwhile, is 2 seconds clear of Willingless, managed to get ahead of him and stay ahead of him, which is strong for his race. Willingless then on the push to pass system there. You can see the green halo over the engine air intake. Is just clear of Barry Clayton, but very much under pressure as he rides over the curbs. So let's see how this battle forms up. For those of you who might not be familiar or have forgotten, the push-to-pass system is a tool that the drivers have for a set amount of time in each race, where they can ask for a bit more power from the engine in order to overtake. They only have a certain amount of deployment per lap, so the drivers have to be relatively tactical about how they deploy. It's not like an ERS system or a DRS in a Formula 1 car where, well, I'd say like an ERS where, you know, you have a battery to tap it so you can run out of charge. It's just to do with time through the mini sectors, and it's all just internal combustion power. So I suppose you could use more petrol doing it that way, but there's no real limit to it outside of how much it's used per lap. And it's a fairly big advantage to the tune of 310s or maybe even just over 100 horsepower there for the drivers to enjoy. A fairly substantial boost, really, and it's useful heading into braking zones and bring cars closer to the action, as Barry Clayton goes a little bit wide there through turn 18, so I imagine that lap will be invalidated. As we see Alex Smith just slightly above of Willingless. Alex Smith has broken away some, or rather Matt Daly's broken away somewhat from Alex Smith. Alex Smith has maintained the pace, but I think Willingless has picked it up on that last lap, because he was a few tenths faster than Alex Smith and is now around about 1.5 seconds behind. Probably being pushed along by Barry Clayton just behind. Willingless seems to be the only driver using the push-to-pass system in this pack of 3. Let's see if we can catch Barry Clayton using it elsewhere on the lap. I see a puff of smoke there from a bit of a lock-up, I imagine, given how much it dispersed by then. That was from Alex Smith. As we go on board now with Paul Millen. Paul Millen slowly but surely hunting down Jack Hodson as they're heading through Sector 2 now. Around about turn 9. And these two at some points have been about 4 tenths of a second apart. Now standing at around about 8 tenths, maybe make that 7 tenths. So we could have a bit of a battle forming up here. Not quite sure how much pace is being deployed by both drivers. It could be that Jack Hodson is just doing as much as he needs to keep Paul Millen at bay. Meanwhile, Paul Millen could be on for a bit of a push here. Not sure where Jack Hodson's just gone. Oh dear, I think that was just a missed braking zone potentially as he now struggles to get that car turned around. But of course, any modern single-seater car is, or any for that matter, is not going to have an ideal turning circle. So that has cost him a fair amount of time. He's dropped down to P7. So Paul Millen says thank you very much. He moves up to P5, can settle in to a more comfortable race now. He's got about 8 seconds, 10 seconds to the car up in front. Has about 7 seconds to the cars behind. So he just needs to settle in, find a bit of a rhythm, look after the tyres, and bring that car home for a good point haul at this stage in the race. Meanwhile, Matt Daly, probably very much the same thing that he's hoping to do. Currently predicted for the fastest lap of the race so far, and it will be his fastest lap, of course. That's a 1:40.9. He's about 5 seconds clear of the rest of the pack. Alex Smith about 1.8 tenths down. Apologies, no, I'll try that again. On that last lap, Alex Smith was around about 4 tenths. No, 1.5 tenths. My maths has completely failed me, apparently. Where are we? Hang on, Reeves having a meltdown, but it's all good. I can tell you on that last lap that Alex Smith will be ready. I'm going to get it right this time. I do have GCSE in maths, honest. 5 tenths of a second. That's what I was trying to say. They're the words I was after. They were in my brain somewhere. I'm just not sure where. So Alex Smith about 5 tenths down on Matt Daly on that last lap. So Matt Daly slowly but surely extending that lead. And let's have a look at Alex Smith actually, because he's very much under pressure here from Willing Gliss. As Matt Daly's actually just out there setting purple sector after purple sector. It's a little bit distracting all the time for him because they are some really quite impressive purple sectors as well, but we're very much focused on this battle here now. Only 3 tenths, 4 tenths, depending on where they are through on track, separating these two drivers now. All of a sudden, Alex Smith very much on the defence in terms of their current pace. It's a 42.7 for Alex Smith on that last lap and a 42.4 for Willing Gliss on the last lap. So Willing Gliss appears to have the upper hand at this point in time, although looking through Sector 3 here, Alex Smith seems to have left him a little bit in the dust. So a little bit more confidence perhaps in Alex Smith's car, maybe a difference in setup as we run through that long right-hander, or long left-hander, apologies, where stability certainly is key. In terms of their best laps then, it is a 42.4 for Willing Gliss, whereas Alex Smith's best lap is a 42.7. So at this point in time, you'd have to place your bet on Willing Gliss, really, as you see him using a push-to-pass system. Let's see, though, how Alex Smith can defend. We know he's certainly capable of a very strong defence. Let's hope that he can string together this weekend on his PS5 controller, of course, the mighty PS5 controller. As the back end steps out, I think he took a little bit too much curb there. That upset the back end of the car, upset the balance of the car potentially, and as he got onto the throttle, the car was less than pleased with it. So that has cost him a lot of time there. He's carrying that deficit all the way down into the next corner. They make contact as we head into turn 10 there, and Willing Gliss eventually takes the position now up into second place for Willing Gliss. Not to be outdone there, Alex Smith certainly wanting to fight for this position as we head through turn 13 and on to the next long straight. The push-pass system now back into effect for Alex Smith this time round. He has a look up the inside. Is he going to be too far back? Yes, he is. Late on those brakes, and Willing Gliss has an issue. That causes him to stop on track. That allowed Alex Smith to actually plough into the back of him, which helped Willing Gliss get free once again. So I'm sure he's quite pleased with that, actually, all things considered. Although Alex Smith now has a substantial amount of aero damage, and Willing Gliss has pretty much no rear wing by the looks of things. So the back end is going to be a little bit twitchy. The balance on Willing Gliss's car somewhat affected by this incident, I can imagine. This has also slowed these two down, and Barry Clayton not too far behind at all there. Yes, just look heading through turn 17, turn 18. Alex Smith has a fairly decent advantage, can carry that pace down the start-finish straight, and is back up into P2 as a result. Good overtake from Alex Smith there, and owing to the small issues with Willing Gliss's car now, it should be a little bit easier in camp Alex Smith in order to try and maintain this P2 in this race. Although Willingless is certainly going to fight for it. Look at him back on that push-to-pass system once again. Only 2 tenths separating these drivers. Has a brave look around the outside. It works, would you believe it or not? That is spectacular. Has a look up the inside. Willingless now heading down through turn 9. And apologies, no, turn 8 here. And there's a big crash between these two. They somehow carry on. They actually blocked Barry Clayton in the process, so he had to stop in order to save his own car there. But see the massive cloud of smoke as those two cars pretty much phasing in and out of each other. They are able to carry on though. Any hopes of keeping up with Matt Daly are gone at this point in time. Their wings are absolutely destroyed. As I believe, speaking of Matt Daly, it's actually come across with a bit of traffic here. Matt Daly, Guy Sorbeck having a bit of contact here. Matt Daly able to carry on though. Yes, it's certainly been an all elbows out battle between these two, and of course the small advantage that Alex Smith had, owing to the fact that Willingless, try that again. Willingless was the only driver to maintain any kind of decent damage between these two. Is all gone now. Alex Smith also carrying damage now. He's now vulnerable to Barry Clayton. Look in the background there as we head through turn 17. Alex Smith now, his two favourite corners on tracks by the looks of things. Now he's able to negotiate here and break away from Barry Clayton somewhat. But Barry Clayton very much now fancies his chances at not just a podium, but potentially a P2 here. Because this battling is certainly not helping the two drivers in blue and pink at all. Gaps then still at the same tight margins that they have been for quite some time now between these two drivers, although the only difference being that Barry Clayton very much in the mix now. The same corner where these two had a bit of a coming together on the previous lap, they negotiate with relative ease at this point in time. Guy Strawbrick facing the wrong way on track here on the exit of turn 9. That's not a comfortable position to be in. It's a little bit vulnerable, shall we say, because it's not easy to get turned around. It's also blind for upcoming cars. There is Paul Millman getting ready to continue on the lead lap of this race. 13 seconds down off Barry Clayton. That's 7 seconds ahead of Andy Craker. Good pace from Paul Millman in this race. Seemed to be that the one lap pace not really there in Paul Millman's car in qualifying, but it's certainly come together in the race, and he's driving a very strong race indeed. And it brings us back to something we've talked about many times before. We've seen over the past few seasons that progression of some drivers were it's really nice to see, actually. Paul Milner, I'm sure, won't be offended by me saying this, but Singapore was certainly one where there were some struggles. And now he's, in terms of race pace, is one of the stronger drivers in the field here. He's driving a very clean race here. He's doing very well indeed. As we go back on board with someone who we haven't seen too much of in this race as we approach the halfway stage, it's Matt Daly, about 30 seconds clear now, as we see Willingless still in this battle for P2 that's been raging on for quite some time now. Currently leading this trio, about 4 tenths behind is Alex Smith, about 4 tenths behind him is Barry Clayton. In terms of their pace at the moment, they certainly are slowing each other down. They're now in the 44s, make that at some points the 45s. It's a 44.9 for Willingless in the previous lap, 44.7 for Alex Smith, who now takes P2, but with a late braking manoeuvre, Willingless locked up all 4 wheels, briefly gets back into P2 and is now in P4. Alex Smith then takes back the position up into P2, and Barry Clayton, somehow in all of this, who's kept the nose the cleanest, has still stayed in P4. I'm sure, though, his time will come. So yes, Alex Smith out, a 44.7 on that previous lap, 44.9 and then a 44.6 for Barry Clayton, although those times will certainly be skewed when we cross the line next, owing to the more elbows out driving, shall we call it, the trading of paint that has occurred on this lap. Willingless then back on that push to pass system in order to try and box off, try and keep Barry Clayton at bay, as we see Alex Smith there not actually closing the door, leaves the door pretty much wide open for Willingless. In fact, Willingless says thank you very much, I'll take that gap, goes up the inside and briefly looks at P2, not to be outdone though. This might have been smart thinking by Alex Smith, doesn't want to compromise his exit, takes back the lead, but running into turn 16, Willingless tries up the inside once again, but unfortunately outbrakes himself and goes off track is somehow still in P2 after all of this. Barry Clayton runs a little bit wide. Alex Smith tight on the inside of the corner here and is now down in P3. We head into turn 1 once again. This is a battle for the ages, ladies and gentlemen, as we start the next lap with Barry Clayton, apologies, I'll try that again, Will Inglis in P2, Alex Smith P3 and Barry Clayton P4. The order hasn't changed, believe it or not, from what it was a few laps ago, but if of course you've been watching along, it's certainly not been that boring. As we see there, Alex Smith now having a look for the outside, heading now down into turn 7. Not much he could do from there, although he briefly looked like he got a nose out in front, and Will Inglis making that car as wide as possible in order to keep Alex Smith at bay. These three are really slowing each other down in all this battling. Now 20 seconds off the lead of this race, but I'm sure they're less concerned with that and more concerned with just how much fun they're having out on track. As we head now down into turn 13, that deceptively tight left-hander, although that could just be me. The drivers could have no issue with it at all. It could just be my lack of driving ability. As we see Barry Clayton having a look up the inside there, is on the push-to-pass system. Will he get the move done on Alex Smith? No, he doesn't. Alex Smith, one of our later breakers, shall we say, was able to keep Barry Clayton at bay. Having a brief look up at the inside at turn 16, decided he was too far back to do anything from there, and I imagine he's going to wait for his favourite part of the track now, as I am coining it, turn 18 and turn 19, which Will Inglis has realised, uses the push-to-pass system out of that corner, but will it be enough to keep Alex Smith behind? I think it just about will be. So that is where Will Inglis is deciding to use his push-to-pass system right on the run through that start-finish straight, so he can get ahead for the corner complex down to turn 4 on the start of the next lap. Strong tactical thinking from Will Inglis there. And then we see Alex Smith on their push-to-pass system as we head now down into turn 7 once again. It was a good use there. Had the outside of the corner, was able to defend from there, and it's now up into P2 as a result. Now, for the sake of their races, I'm sure they want to try and continue on, but no, Will Inglis instead is going to fight back for it once again. It's decided, no, P3 is not what I'm settling for. Takes the inside for turn 9, turn 10. As we head through turn 10 now, actually get out in front once again. These two are treating this like demolition derby, ladies and gentlemen. They are absolutely nose to tail battling here. Trading all the paint in the world, not a care in the world, for track limits or the condition of their car even. They are absolutely going for it, and they must be losing a little bit of pace owing to some damage, but I'm sure they're enjoying the battle nonetheless. Barry Clayton has another look up as we head into turn 14. Briefly into P3, has to jump back into P4 once again. Just doesn't seem to have the pace to get past Alex Smith and Will Inglis, despite the battling going on between those two out in front. As we head through turn 16, turn 17 now, and run through the final left-hander on the lap, we see Alex Smith rather takes a little bit too much curb. That upsets him. He very nearly ends up in the barrier, just like Lance Stroll, but is able to recover. As we now see that, although he hasn't got the battle with Will Inglis this time around, it's Barry Clayton as we head through the first sector that is going to be putting up a charge. And briefly had a look at P2. Is going to have another look, in fact, and Alex Smith gives him the room to do so as we start now heading down towards turn 7 once again. Turn 6 to negotiate first. He's on the push-to-pass system, is Alex Smith. Will it be enough, though? A huge contact between Barry Clayton and Alex Smith. Somehow, both drivers coming out of that relatively unscathed, although I think Barry Clayton missing his braking zone potentially as a result. Not sure what happened there. That was a big, big collision between those two drivers. He did an almighty job to keep pointing in the right direction, but doesn't seem to be able to get the car going. Not sure what's going on in Barry Clayton's car there, if he's had some type of technical issue with his rig. Either way, hopefully he can get underway soon. He's dropping down into P6 and dropping down further and further back. What a shame. His race coming to what is quite a late end. In fact, only 6 minutes to go on the clock here, as we now see Alex Smith can focus his sights on Will Inglis, the car out in front now. I think this very well could be a connection issue, actually, with Barry Clayton here, as his timer doesn't seem to be updating very well, so hopefully he can get that rectified for race 2 even. It'd be a shame to lose him at this stage because he's clearly very much on the pace for the front runners here and is providing some fantastic action for us on track. As you see, Will Inglis now negotiating the final corners on track with Alex Smith. We'll be hoping to hunt him down. We'll see over the next lap or so what the pace is looking like now. These two are in a slightly more comfortable phase of the race, shall we say. The tensions, the water's cooled down ever so slightly. You know, the pressure has been released somewhat. We can settle into a bit more of a relaxing stage in this race ahead of these two, trying to see how quickly they can scale the Marina Bay Sands by virtue of being pushed into it. But yes, at this point in time, Matt Daly's had a very comfortable race, really. It's had not too much to remark about, really. He's about 25 seconds clear of the rest of the pack. His last lap a 43.5, so still the fastest car out on track at this stage, and is running a very nice race indeed. As we see, Alex Smith currently putting out all of the stops in order to catch up with the winless Andy Craker, having some issues of his own, which is a shame to see late on his race, rather becoming unravelled around about the midway stage here, which is a shame because he was up there in qualifying as well. As we see, Alex Smith has closed that gap on this lap. We'll have a look at the times now as we enter the final 5 minutes of this race, but that gap now standing at less than a second. This is where things like the pressure that you put on the car in front start to matter. This is where things like the slipstream, the push-to-pass system start to become properly into play now. It's one thing to catch up, it's another thing to have the pace advantage to form the overtake. In terms of their pace then, on that previous lap, it was a 44.6 for Will Inglis, whereas Alex Smith flying along with a 43.5. That's impressive for this stage in the race. The tyres wearing out somewhat, although the fuel load's getting lighter. Matt Daly, a perfect example of that, in fact. Previous lap, a 30.925. Strong Sector 1 for Matt Daly. We're heading back down towards turn 7 once again. Will Inglis still ahead of Alex Smith, but we've seen in this middle sector these two certainly push each other harder. I imagine we'll be seeing that at least once or twice more before the end of this race. Not quite sure what happened to Barry Clayton's car there, so I imagine we'll update you with that as soon as we can. Actually looks like he's just collected a little bit of damage here, and this is why he's currently running in P4, of course. A great drive for him, but that position close to the podium is potentially under threat here, because Paul Brady has worked his way up through the field as well, is now putting the pressure on. We're going to be wary of two important battles going on here then as we head through towards the first part of the lap with Will Inglis and Alex Smith. Paul Millman just about staying ahead of Paul Brady. In terms of their laps, then Paul Millman a 47.4 on that last lap, so a bit of an issue on the previous lap, whereas Paul Brady had 47.0, so a little bit slower than what we'd expect at this stage. Paul Millman, his best lap a 45 flat, Paul Brady a 44 flat, so Paul Brady is really putting that pressure on Paul Millman. Once again, it's been a little while, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm happy to report for at least the third time around now, it's the Battle of the Pauls. So we have Paul Millman, currently the prime Paul in this race. It's P4 at the moment, about half a second ahead of Paul Brady. Meanwhile, Will Inglis just about ahead of Alex Smith. And I suppose we have the Battle of the Pauls. These two, there's no really real kind of pattern here, so I guess we'll just have to go based off how the driving was looking earlier in this race. So the battle of the Nikita Mazepins, perhaps, is what we should go with for the condition of these cars after the battling in this race. As we look, I believe Paul Brady had an issue there, because as we can see, he's dropped back off Paul Millman. This will be a great race, actually, for his championship hopes. Let's have a look at how they're looking at in the next few seconds. But Will Inglis still defending with all of his might against Alex Smith here. As we head through that final corner now, a bit of a favourite of Alex Smith, as we've said already. He should be getting onto the push to pass around about here, potentially. No, Will Inglis isn't, neither is Alex Smith. Alex Smith trying to go around the outside into turn 1. That was probably not going to work. And instead, he waits for the inside of turn 3. Again, hasn't quite got the pace advantage to make the overtake just yet, but is so putting that pressure on now. It is very close indeed. In terms of the championship, then, Paul Millman actually last in the standings, as we see Alex Smith on the run down towards turn 7, gets the move secured with that pace advantage in the straight and is up into P2. But for how long is the question we ask ourselves. The timer has hit 0, and we wait to see where Matt Daly is now. Matt Daly heading through towards Sector 3 now. So this is currently the penultimate lap of this race, and Matt Daly will be starting the final lap now. And I'm sure Alex Smith will be praying that comes sooner rather than later, because he's going to have his work out for him, trying to keep Will Inglis at bay for one more lap here in Singapore. Yeah, Paul Millman actually currently last in the standing, so a P4 would be a phenomenal result for him, and great for his championship hopes. It should jump him up at least 1 or 2 positions and bring him back into the mix, as Matt Daly has actually crossed the line there, apologies, and takes the race 1 victory with a very strong drive indeed. That was at no point looking under threat, and slides in celebration as he comes to the end of this race now. Are we going to have victory? Well, I'd be surprised if we had victory donuts just yet. We had a victory drift instead. But Alex Smith heading now through turn 18 after what felt like a race-long battle, and it looked uncertain at some point, but he crosses the line in P2. Will Inglis comes home in P3 to round out the podium, and they weave in celebration. Geiss Robert classified P7, Jack Hodgson classified P8. Paul Millman then, a strong drive for him, under pressure, under threat perhaps, late on in this race. But still, he'll be coming home with a P4 in the end. Good, important points for him at this stage in the championship. Paul Brady as well. Decent points for both Pauls in this race. And then we have Steve Knight will be coming home P6. Is in fact classified P6 as well. Strong first race here at Singapore. There we are, the victory donuts we've been waiting for since both of these seasons for the second half of 2023 began. Thank you very much, Matt Daly, for providing very much a requirement of mine, I think, at this stage. It's the only thing on my rider. But that brings an end to this race. We'll join you in just a few minutes for race 2, the reverse grid race. So here we are on the grid, ladies and gentlemen, for race 2 of this evening's racing, the reverse grid round. I should mention some changes to reverse grid sessions. In 2023, it's now the top 5 that have had their order reversed. So it's Guy Swarbrick, P1, Stephen Knight, P2, Paul Brady, P3, Paul Millman, P4, and Will Inglis, P5, Alex Smith, P6. Oh, sorry, no, apologies, top 7, my bad. Completely don't know where I got that number out of my head from. Matt Daly, P7, of course. We have 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away at a slightly slow start for Guy Swarbrick there, as we see Paul Brady working his way up into the lead of this race, already heading into turn 1. He takes this lead, then Paul Millman following him closely behind, up into P2. Will Inglis in P4 there. Strong start for a few in the field. Guy Swarbrick holding on to P3. Potential chance at the podium here. And let's see as we look at the rest of the field. Matt Daly in P5. Steve Knight, not the best start for Jack Hodson actually. Alex Smith in P6. So he, out of our front runners in the previous race, along with Barry Clayton, you could argue, not having an ideal start here. But Paul Brady currently leading as we head further into this lap now. Currently heading through turn 7 and turn 8, about half a second ahead of Paul Millman. These two have some experience battling each other at this track in the previous race. So let's see what they've learned from that. And if they will be able to use that experience to work together potentially to push on and try and keep Will Inglis and Matt Daly at bay. It will be a tall order, of course. These two had immense pace in qualifying, but as we head later into this lap now, it's Will Inglis actually who is ahead of Matt Daly at this point. But Matt Daly, you just have to wonder how long is it until he works his way through the pack. What we've seen so far this year, I'd argue, is Matt Daly doesn't have the best luck, so to speak, in the reverse grid races. He doesn't seem to quite get away as well as he otherwise could, or maybe, you know, he has a few more struggles, just gets caught up in other things. So he'll often have a really strong race 1 and then has to work for it in race 2. Or often the inverse is true, actually. He can potentially have a few issues in race 1 and then benefits hugely from that in race 2. A few issues here, though, in race 2 for Will Inglis, Paul Brady, and Matt Daly potentially. No, Matt Daly's up into P3. Will Inglis and Paul Millman, what a shame. Strong start to their races here, but unfortunately, commentators curse? Potentially no, I don't think so just yet. They've ended up in P8 and P9 respectively. Barry Clayton has actually had issues as well. He's had to dive into the pits. Not sure what went on there, but that is a great shame. A weekend to forget then for Barry Clayton. That allows Paul Brady to have a slightly more comfortable lead up front here in Singapore. And then we have Will Inglis currently not leading this championship, which is something we've become not too familiar with recently. Currently 5th in championship. Let's see how that changes after the previous race, of course. Yeah, currently still 5th in this championship. Not the type of weekend he needs to be having, really, if he wants to try and push towards the lead of this race. Going into this weekend, it was Paul Brady who led the championship. I can now tell you that it's Matt Daly who leads this championship with 86 points to his name after that strong race 1. So this is Paul Brady's chance to take back the lead, this reverse grid race. It's the chance to show Matt Daly that he's going to have some competition going later into this season. Alex Smith close behind here. Likewise, he's in a similar position to Will Inglis, only on fewer points. So the races at this stage in the championship are really important for guys like Alex and Will, as they need to try and close up those margins to drivers who might have been able to make a couple more rounds or just had a more fortunate race weekend. Andy Brammer not here this evening, unfortunately, currently in P3 on 65 points. As we see, it's still Paul Brady leads this race from Alex Smith, and then very close behind indeed is Matt Daly. We haven't seen too much on track between Matt Daly and Alex Smith yet this weekend, so here's an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to see what two very fast drivers are capable of. Differences between these two cars then: one's pink, one's yellow, one's controlled by steering wheel and pedals, one's controlled by a PS5 controller. That's the other big difference there. But clearly the almighty power of the PS5 controller is prevailing here, because look, Alex Smith very much keeping Matt Daly at bay for this for the time being. Yeah, so in terms of the championship then, it's Matt Daly who leads with 86 points, Paul Brady 85, Andrew Brown with 65, Barry Clayton 63, Will Inglis 60, Alex Smith 39 here, so this will be a very important race indeed. Well, race 1 of course already was, and race 2 more so again. And we have Andy Craker with 21 points to his name. Unfortunately not here in race 2 rather, which is a great shame. He had decent pace in qualifying, unfortunately not to be. So he's rather on the back foot in the championship now, as is Jack Hodson actually. Jack Hodson also out of the count really in this race. Look at him down in P9 at this point in time. That is not where he would usually be in terms of his pace. So an unfortunate start to the season for him. Likewise, Paul Millman a little bit further down than he would like to be, but still decent points to his name with 16 points now, catching up to a couple more drivers. He remains in 10th, but of course we now have 11 competitors in the field after the start of this race weekend. Heading through the final couple of corners, then back onto the start-finish straight. Paul Brady must be starting to feel that pressure now. Slightly slower on that lap. It was a 1:43.9 on the previous lap, so slightly slower than what we'd expect for a competitor at this stage of the race. Alex Smith in that Blue Spark Automotive car, a 42.2. And then we have Matt Daly with a 42.1 on the previous lap. So these three, it seems to be a race of trios really here at Singapore. Both Alex Smith and Paul Brady on the push-to-pass system. Matt Daly resisting for now, has a look up the inside as we head down towards turn 7. Nothing to be done just yet. Alex Smith remaining then in P2. Paul Brady though very much under pressure at this stage. As we see Matt Daly having a brief exploration, shall I say, of the inside. Didn't have a look up the inside, wasn't close enough, but just thought, checking, how the corner was looking. Decided, no, I can't make the move from this far back. We'll remain in P3 for now, but still really piling on the pressure to both cars out in front, actually, because anything that Matt Daly does, Alex Smith wants to try and replicate to try and keep Paul Brady under control, but he can't do so just yet. That gap a little bit too large, and rather more under threat from Matt Daly, I would say, is Alex Smith as we head down now towards turn 16. And it's still anyone's game on this next lap. Side by side, Matt Daly rather has a look up the inside of turn 16. That compromises him though through turn 17. He has the outside through turn 18, and of course this is one of Alex Smith's favourite parts of the track. But Matt Daly taking the IndyCar line there onto the start-finish straight. Doesn't have the inside for turn 1, but keeps up with Alex Smith as a result of that. This battle looks to be building up quite nicely between these two drivers. Could be going on for quite some time. I should mention in all of this, good recovery here for Will Inglis. He's managed to work his way up back through the field, has 17 minutes to go, and you rather wonder if he will be back with these three fighting for the podium at some stage later on in this race, because he's about a second quicker than the rest of the field at this point in time. Has some clean air to set some fast laps, and these three of course slowing each other down with battling, just like the top three did in the previous race. Well, the second down to fourth did in the previous race. Matt Daly rather had that one under control, didn't he? Heading now through turn 5 in just a moment. In fact, we have told a complete lie. No, apologies. That is at turn 10 we're heading through now. Apparently my maths this evening is really letting me down. Although, when is it not? Alex Smith still keeping Matt Daly very close behind there. Fantastic battling going on between these two. And all this battling, of course, I'm sure Paul Brady is hoping to continue on furthermore, because the more that these two battle for P2, the easier it is for Paul Brady to keep control of this race, maintain a slightly more comfortable pace than he'd otherwise like to, and build a gap to those two cars behind. He can settle in and enjoy some slightly more comfortable running. Jack Hodson seems to have had a bit of an impact with a wall here, maybe not quite gelling with the track. Singapore is one of the more difficult tracks in the calendar, I would say. It certainly keeps you on your toes. And I imagine, just like there is in the real world, there's a slightly physical aspect to it as well. Maybe less so than the real world, because of course you're not dealing with the humidities and temperatures, but you're still dealing with all those tight twists and turns, and after a little while they can become somewhat cumbersome, of course. We're heading now through turn 5, the long right hander before you have a run into turn 7, a crucial corner then, the exit of turn 5. As we see all three drivers on that push-to-pass system there. Matt Daly takes the inside line there, using the push-to-pass system well. But of course, the inside through turn 6 gives you the outside for turn 7. Not that that matters for Matt Daly. He takes the position, takes P2 from Alex Smith, and you rather wonder for how long that will be, because while Matt Daly will try to go for P1, and I'm sure will give up a damn good fight doing so, Alex Smith is very much hot on his heels, and I'm sure wants P2 back. .3 separating Matt Daly and Paul Brady now. And Paul Brady will be very much looking in his rearview mirror, seeing that bright yellow RSS Supreme occupying the full breadth of it. As we head now down towards turn 16, once again purple sector actually for Matt Daly through sector 1. He's absolutely flying along now. Is side by side with Paul Brady. Can he get the move done on the outside into turn 16? Has the inside for turn 17 there. They bang wheels together, but well defended by Paul Brady. Takes the position back when it looked to have been it could have been Matt Daly's corner, really, but Matt Daly has to settle for P2 once again. This brings Alex Smith back into the fight now as we head into turn 1. Paul Brady defending the inside there, takes the inside, keeps Matt Daly behind. Alex Smith now very much fancies his chances at P2. It's all about the entries and exits here at Singapore with these tight 90-degree corners. It's all about how confident you are heading into the corner and how much you can grip up on the exit, because that costs you big time if you aren't able to do so. But Matt Daly then certainly is able to do so, takes the lead of this race, and now Alex Smith is looking to overtake Paul Brady much in the same manner that Matt Daly overtook him just a few laps ago. It's now Alex Smith in P2, Matt Daly P1 and Paul Brady down in P3, but I'm sure we will see more of this battling just yet, although it's crucial at this stage if they have any hope at fighting for this race lead, that Paul Brady and Alex Smith don't get caught up battling each other. It'll be far more important for them and far more good for their points tally that they keep up with Matt Daly. Don't get too bogged down in battling and make sure that Matt Daly isn't able to break away in a similar manner to how he did in race 1. The back end of Matt Daly's car there stepping out big time. It looked rather difficult to tame. He was able to keep it facing the right direction, although that would have cost him some time, which I'm sure is a mistake that Alex Smith would like to see him replicate some more as we head now down towards turn 16. Once again, that gap stands at about 1 second larger than what we've seen at any point between these three over the past few laps. In fact, make that the first 50% of this race, ladies and gentlemen. Would you believe we're already at the halfway margin? And Alex Smith, perhaps his favourite part of the track once again, takes the Matt Daly IndyCar line there, back onto the start-finish straight, gains a huge amount of time as a result, and now fancies his chances at battling Matt Daly for the lead once again, or at least tries to keep him under pressure, keep him honest, maybe force an error if he hasn't got the pace to overtake, and still fight for that race lead. Because at this point in time, it's looking like it could be another Matt Daly masterclass, just like we saw in the touring car round at Snetterton just 1 week ago. This time, though, it's Alex Smith who makes contact with the wall there. A fairly big collision, in fact, that will have cost him in terms of his front wing. It has. His front wing now looking like it's on the higher side of damage as a result, according to our system. Has to use the push-to-pass system to compensate for that lost momentum. But just look at that. Lost 2 seconds through that one sector. Is now Matt Daly leads by about 3.5 seconds, and surely Paul Brady will be fighting to try and at least take back P2 in this race, with Alex Smith carrying that damage up in front. These three are the closest rivals on track at this point in time, and it's now very much a battle for P2 as Matt Daly pulls out a 5-second lead, a purple sector 1. That was a 30.8. That is, I think, the strongest first sector we've seen all race weekend, including qualifying, so a fantastic effort from Matt Daly here. Alex Smith picks up more damage for his troubles as well. Surely now Paul Brady must be able to get ahead. Takes the outside line for the next corner. They are side by side, and side by side for how long? Who's going to get the better run? Down towards turn 16 now. It looks to be it's Paul Brady who has secured that move. Meanwhile, Matt Daly still setting purple sectors. 8 seconds in front of these two now. It's a battle that looks like it could go on forever, but it seems to be that Paul Brady has brought it to a close now as we head through turn 17. Once more, it's Paul Brady in P2 rather. Alex Smith settling for P3. A shame when it looked like it could have been a race lead at some point for him on that previous lap. I can confirm Matt Daly gelling with the track there sets the fastest lap, not only of this race, not only of race 1, but of the entire race weekend, including qualifying. It was a 40.1 on that previous lap there. An almighty effort and a proper side from Matt Daly that he means business in this race, and he is going to try and extend that newfound championship lead at this stage in the championship, only on round 3. And Matt Daly's making it difficult for everyone else. Nearly 8.5 seconds, in fact, nearly 9 seconds clear of Paul Brady and Will Inglis. At one point, his close rivals. We have 10 minutes to go in this race. Will Inglis is in P3 because Alex Smith is in the pits here. What a shame for him in this race. It all went wrong in the final third of this race. It all became undone for Alex Smith, really, unfortunately. And we've seen this in the past. Some race weekends just really don't string together well for him. It just doesn't quite go his way, which is a great shame. He has immense pace, but he will suffer a bit of a points deficit as a result of this. So that means it's Paul Brady in P2, slightly more securely than it otherwise would be, and Will Inglis now with a 33-second delta to the race lead. Currently in P3. I'm sure if you'd asked Will Inglis after the start of this race on lap 1, he'd be very happy with a potential podium. Riding over the curbs though, Will Inglis, the car looking slightly unsettled as a result, but is able to carry on. Has a car, Barry Clayton, about 4 seconds behind him, so doesn't want to make too many mistakes, but can at least afford to not push on too much and use the rest of his tyres. At this point in time, with 9 seconds to go, you'd have to wonder whether or not he can close up on the likes of Paul Brady or Matt Daly without some type of substantial error. Now his focus should very much be on securing this podium, making sure that he still takes away some decent points from this race weekend. Of course, did well in race 1, so wants to build on that with a few more points here in race 2. And of course, I should mention you can follow along with the timing of this race. Just simply go to aroc2.emperorservers.com /live-timing. And you will be able to see everything that is going on in this race for each driver as it happens as well. The likes of Barry Clayton's just set a he's just set a personal best sector 1 on this current lap, closing up then to Will Inglis with all of his might. Will Inglis looking a little bit scruffy at some parts of the lap, whereas Barry Clayton seems to be settling into a bit of a stride now, probably egged on by seeing Will Inglis up front and knowing that that means a podium is on the cards. Will Inglis has actually just made contact with the wall once again. Not sure where he is on track now. There he is, just ever so slightly in front of Barry Clayton. Now they're heading through turn 13. That tight left-hand hairpin as we run down towards Sector 3 in just a moment's time. It's going to be Barry Clayton who benefits from the slipstream here, has a look around the outside. That might not be a look around the outside, that might just be a smoother line for him to take, maybe preserve the tyres a little bit longer into this race. Not too long to go, of course, only just over 5 minutes. And Barry Clayton very much now side by side with Will Inglis as we head into turn 16. Has the inside there, compromised by going over the curbs though. Heads through turn 17 back behind Will Inglis once again. Who's going to be on that push-to-pass system first? Who's going to nail the final corners and that run down into turn 1? Let's see as we get onto the start-finish line once again. Barry Clayton actually very much in the slipstream, but it's Will Inglis who's on that push-to-pass system as we head into turn 1. It's still Will Inglis in P3 for the time being. Meanwhile, Jack Hodson up into P7, so a bit of recovery for him, hoping to take some points away from this race weekend. Whereas Barry Clayton hoping to take some points away from Will Inglis and redeem himself, or rather make up for race 1, which of course didn't go his way on that push-to-pass system, and has the inside for turn 6, secures the position for turn 7. Let's see if Will Inglis can respond to that, but as it stands, it's Barry Clayton with a spot on the podium in this race. Heading into turn 10 once again. About a second between Barry Clayton and Will Inglis as it stands. So that gap looking a little bit more comfortable than it did just a few laps ago when we saw Barry Clayton was starting to close up. Let's have a look at their pace at the moment. Let's see if this has been something that's been brewing for a little while. Barry Clayton a 44.0 on the last lap, of course. Much stronger than Will Inglis' 46.7, but in terms of their outright pace, they are pretty much neck and neck. It's a 43.362 for Barry Clayton and a 43.358 for Will Inglis in terms of their best lap. So I imagine that at this stage, this turn in pace, this turnaround in fortunes for these two drivers is more likely down to something like damage to the car or tyre wear. If Barry Clayton's been looking after his tyres better in this race, he will benefit substantially later on, around about now, with improved tyre life, and as the fuel load gets lighter, his pace will pick up substantially. I think we are seeing a reflection of that. Not to be outdone, of course. In all of this, Matt Daly's now been leading a relatively comfortable 15-second lead gap to the rest of the field for the past 8 or 10 minutes now. And he's still setting the purple sector's best lap, of course, that 140.1. That was a spectacular lap before. Currently in the low 141s, fastest car on track at this point in time. Meanwhile, Paul Millman currently running in P5, so another strong race as it stands for Paul Millman, although I would expect that he'll be under threat from Alex Smith in just a moment's time. In terms of their pace at the moment, it's a 47.8 on the last lap for Paul Millman. So I think another issue, potentially a very similar situation to what we saw in the previous race, actually. And then we have Alex Smith, the 42.9 on the last lap. So Paul Millman potentially under threat here as Alex Smith tries to work his way back through the field after his earlier misfortunes and tries to recover some points from race 2 here. Side by side then as we head into turn 16. Paul Millman tries to go for the inside there, but as we've seen on a couple of occasions now, taking the inside, riding over that curb can compromise you through the corner complex, and we've seen an example of that as Alex Smith has taken P5. Now Paul Millman settles for P6 in the late stages of this race now. Paul Millman, Barry Clayton currently setting personal best laps. Apologies, that was Paul Brady. Barry Clayton currently setting personal best laps as Paul Brady has broken away somewhat from the Will Inglis and Barry Clayton pack behind. He's in a rather comfortable position now, is Paul Brady. He can focus on bringing it home really now. Doesn't have to worry too much about the cars behind. Just needs to make sure that the car has enough fuel and enough tyre life to get home without a puncture or the engine dying out, which is something we've seen on a few occasions in the past, of course, and it must be so gut-wrenching to get so far into a race and have it all come undone in the last lap, which is something we saw at Singapore, of course, this week as well. And the back end on Paul Brady's car there, actually stepping out ever so slightly, heading through the turn 2, turn 3 part of this lap. Will Inglis, meanwhile, appears to have had a bit of an impact with the wall. Not sure how substantial it was. It doesn't appear to have been too bad at all as he made contact with the wall and picked up a bit more front wing damage, but is still able to carry on, which is the most important thing. We haven't had a look at it since qualifying, actually. Jack Hodgson currently borrowing Andrew Harvey's old car there, so good to see the cobwebs dusted off that thing. But I love that Golf livery. It's absolutely superb. As he bounces it over the curb. Currently running in P7, so some points to pick up here in race 2, but still not as many as he would like. Actually picks up a bit of damage as he bounces over that curb as well. Of course, these RSS Supremes can take a bit more abuse over the curb than say, for example, modern Formula 1 cars. A little bit less going on in terms of downforce from the floor, slightly less intricate aerodynamics, so these cars can afford to be beaten up a little bit more, shall we say, to an extent. And I think Alex Smith and Will Inglis certainly did explore that extent in race 1 as Barry Clayton locks up a little bit, or at least scrubs the tyres ever so slightly over the surface there, causing a slight bit of smoke, but is able to carry on, keep Will Inglis at bay as well. Barry Clayton actually having a slightly slow previous lap there, not sure what went on. It was a 49.7 compared to Wingless's 46. So we've got a couple laps left on the timer. This could be the case that we see a change for position for P3 coming up if Wingless plays his cards right. I'm currently on board with Matt Daly. He's driven a fantastic weekend all round, currently heading through turn 7, so this is the penultimate lap of this race now. And nothing really to complain about from Matt Daly's side here. He drove a superb qualifying even, and was in the low 1 minute 40 second range when a few drivers could keep up with him. The back end starting to squirrel about at this point in time. I imagine the tyres somewhat worn at this stage, but Matt Daly able to carry on with ease here. Has a little bit of traffic to negotiate, but it will be a fairly easy cruise home for him. Again, the back end snapping out. He just wants to make sure he can get that car home safely and securely. He doesn't want to spin around on this last lap, of course. So we are now heading through turn 15. Once again, turn 15, much like turn 6 actually. Not so much a corner in these very capable high downforce vehicles. Just a slight kink in the straight, really. Small puff of smoke from a lockup heading into turn 16. You want to make sure you slow down enough to avoid these rather nasty curves here in Singapore. As we see now, Matt Daly negotiates turn 18, turn 19 on to the start-finish straight to cross the line to take the race to victory there. Fantastic drive from Matt Daly, and he comes home after a bit of a Matt Daly masterclass, as we've become slightly accustomed to now, and takes a bit of a Grand Slam weekend all around there. Good drive from Matt Daly. Paul Brady, strong drive from him as well, benefited from a good start in this reverse grid race and comes home to take P2. A very well-deserved podium for Paul Brady there. And Barry Clayton ended up capitalising on the misfortunes of Alex Smith and just had much stronger pace in comparison to Willingsley. Was able to bring it home and will be rounding out the podium if the next couple of corners go well for him. Jack Otton classified P7, Steve Knight classified P8, and Guy Swarbrick classified P9. But it is Barry Clayton now heading around the final two corners to round out the podium here in Singapore. Strong drive for Barry Clayton and making up rather for race 1. I believe we've just missed out on some victory donuts from Paul Brady, so apologies there, Paul. Willingsley comes home P4, Alex Smith coming home P5 in the end there. So a recovery of sorts at the end there, but not the lofty heights of a podium that he wanted, and I am sure deserved as well. I think Willingsley is trying to initiate some donuts, but the car seems to be gripping up rather well there, and doesn't seem to want to do so. So then that brings... Oh no, we do have some victory celebrations from Matt Daly just yet. Perfect. Great timing there, Matt Daly, with some victory burnouts, which are, of course, welcome. That's what we like to see, and that will round out this evening's running. I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed commentating as Matt Daly finds a wall there. I'll catch you in a fortnight's time for our round in Japan, and then, of course, the next round at Silverstone for the touring cars next week. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.